Who are we voting for? Meet the candidates. Who Are We Voting For was created so we could understand who the candidates are and what they are about. This is not an endorsement for any candidate. This is for the voter to be more educated about who we're voting for.
My name is Elizabeth Hughes, and I'm a senior associate counsel for UPMC. So a little bit about myself. I am a Penn Hills native. I graduated from Penn Hills High School, class of '89, so I am a child of the '80s. I've been alive for all the Super Bowls. May not think I'm that old, but I am. And I'm a crazy diehard Steelers fan. Anybody who's ever watched a Steelers game with me can tell you it's a little bit of an experience. So just in general, crazy football fan. I grew up in Penn Hills with two brothers. My mom and dad were married for 56 years. My dad has recently passed away in 2021, but I'm the youngest and the only girl, so always a daddy's girl. And miss him dearly, but he was a great father, so all of my memories of him are totally positive, and he was a very strong influence in my life and someone who was always a great role model and someone I dearly looked up to. Miss him every day, but like I said, have wonderful memories of all of the things that he meant to us as part of our family. He was someone who was always there as the strength, but also a lot of fun. He made sure that we had a lot of great experiences when we were kids. We always went on, I remember the road trips, most of all, a lot of trips to DC in the summer times with family. So we've probably been to just about every single museum in Washington, D.C. multiple times. That was kind of like our family vacations. A lot of those were to Washington, D.C. So there, every place, every historical place in Washington, D.C. that you could go and visit, we've been there. So all the museum, all the sites, all of the attractions, that was something we did regularly. My mom, super feisty, and she is about to be 81. Anyone who has ever met my mom knows this, and she has been a very big part of who I am, and a cheerleader and someone who's encouraged me to kind of live out my dreams and also always speak up for myself and others, which sometimes can get you in trouble, but also nothing that I will ever stop doing. So don't look for me to stop speaking up and speaking out anytime soon. So that's something that I got directly from her. And if that's part of my personality, that will always be part of my personality. And you can attribute that to my mom. But there was a lot of laughing and loud talking in my house. So if you've ever been around me and you're like, oh my God, she's very loud, that is because my mom is the youngest of 10. And so it kind of rubbed off on us. And like I said, football, Sundays, that was a big deal. Everyone was screaming and loud in the house. That's how we were, big family all around all the time. So I always had great memories of that. Penn Hills is a very big kind of influence. I'm friends with a lot of my friends from middle school and high school. My best friend has been my best friend for 40 plus years, since we were 12 years old. So close-knit community, very, very good friends, and I'm very lucky to have that influence in my life and all those people still around me. So I feel pretty blessed to have had a really great childhood and be blessed and know that not everybody has that opportunity. So it's really important to me when I see that other people haven't had that, to kind of maybe help them and understand that not everybody has had that experience that I've had. So I have skills that I believe would be very transferable to the Court of Common Pleas. I've been practicing law for 20 years, and I've practiced in all divisions of the Court of Common Pleas. So family, civil, criminal, and orphans court. I have over 10 years practicing in family division, and I think that's important in particular because most of the new judges begin their tenure in family division. And so I think it's very important that the litigants who come before that court have people who have that experience and who understand what's going on, because it is a very highly emotionally charged kind of situation. A lot of times those folks, are going through a lot. And to have a judge who can be there, who understands kind of right from the door what's going on and what those people are experiencing and going through is very important, not just to understand the law, but to also understand all the emotion behind it and the complexities of those cases. They can be very complex. I think people sometimes make the mistake of thinking that family law is just people fighting with each other over their kids and their stuff. There are very complex jurisdictional issues, very complex financial issues, very complex issues that you see in the family division, and I think people don't sometimes understand that. So I've practiced, I have that practice experience and can come right out of the gate in that division. But I also have practice experience, a lot of experience practicing orphans court division, particularly with mental health issues. I was a mental health caseworker before I became a lawyer, but I also practiced in orphans court as an assistant county solicitor. So I've had experience in thousands of involuntary commitment hearings as well as guardianship work. And I also practiced in civil division when I was doing toxic tort litigation, also doing some work with the county solicitor's office, doing federal stuff in 1983 cases, a little bit of that, a little bit of criminal work when I was doing solo work. So I've done kind of a little bit of everything, but like I said, the bulk of my experience was family division and orphans court. I am now in-house counsel, and I do health law. So I'm counsel for 3 of the area's major hospitals, and I do pediatric specialty work, women's health, and that is a lot of also crossover from what I used to do with family court. So I advise a lot of physicians on the work they do with our child advocacy center, and they testify a lot in child abuse cases. So advise them. I advise outside counsel on litigation matters. I work, do contract work, just pretty much everything, but I do general counsel duties for those hospitals and advise our whole system on anything having to do with children and minors, pediatric, they call it the pediatric service line. So I have that experience. I'm working across government, healthcare, and the private sector has pretty much, I think, given me a really good background in being able to know how to collaborate and bring all different stakeholders to the table so that, solve problems. And I like to say that judges are at their core problem solvers. And, sometimes they solve little problems, sometimes they solve really big, complex problems. And I think that I've been doing that across my whole career. And I have the skill set to be able to bring that to the bench. I like to say, I like to bring common sense to the Court of Common Pleas. So that's one of the things that I think sometimes gets lost in the shuffle, that there's sometimes really just simple solutions to problems that get missed because things seem so vast and everybody's in a lot of different directions, where if you just bring the people together to sit down, be able to have conversations and get the right stakeholders when you're trying to solve a problem, sometimes it's right in front of you. I don't think we do that enough, and I don't think there's enough collaboration. I've been able to collaborate for years. I was president of the Allegheny County Bar Association during COVID. That was not something that anybody saw coming, but I was able to, lead that organization of 5,500 members, and we came out of that very successfully, with no financial issues, in the black. We kept members engaged, kept transparency, let people know what was going on, and really had some really positive initiatives that came out of that still are going on. So those are all things that I think would translate very well to the bench. I felt that I should run for Court of Common Pleas, particularly this time. I think that the amount of experience that I have at this time was the right amount of experience. I think it's important for, I felt like 20 years was something that was the right amount. I think that it's important for judges to have a good breadth of experience and a good length of experience to be able to effectively serve. And I think that judges really should be prepared to still learn every day that they're on the bench, but also have that good foundation. And I think to have a good foundation, you really have to have kind of been entrenched in those areas of law and, for a significant amount of time. I just think that you really have to kind of, for me, in particular, and it may not be for everybody, but for me, I felt like that was the right amount of time where I felt like it was the right thing for me to have enough, confidence and knowledge that I felt that I could serve effectively. I also had people who had encouraged me, who were asking me, who felt that I would be, an asset to the bench, and that, that kind of, encouragement from your colleagues, to have that is very, it's humbling, and it's also encouraging, and I thought about that, and that was also something that I, really appreciated, that other people saw me in that light and really thought that I could do this. So that was something that I really had to consider, that if people really thought that I could do this, colleagues that I had practiced with every day thought that I was worthy, that maybe that was worth a consideration, and thought that I should sit back and think about that. And so that was something that I took into consideration, and thought that maybe I did have something to offer to the bench. And so I decided that it was the right time. I think people don't understand how important voting for judges is. We have folks who go out, once every 4 years because they, think that the presidential elections are so important, which they are. But, your local elections are so important because these are offices that affect your everyday lives. And so, you don't ever want to have to come before judges if you don't have to. But a lot of times you or family members that you care about end up, sometimes not by any choice of their own, being in the courtroom and end up in front of judges. And I can't tell you how many times I've had friends and family members, every time there's an election and there's judicial candidates on the ballot, call me and ask me, hey, who should I vote for? And they have no idea. And, I try to point them to resources so they can do their research and decide and research the candidates themselves. And people just do not understand how important this is. And so I think that, we really have to educate ourselves about how important these elections are, how important judges are, and make sure that we are ourselves, educating ourselves on what judges do, how the courts work, and also spreading the word to our friends, families, neighbors on how important this is. Because, when folks end up at court, they're upset, they complain, about this judge didn't listen to me. I don't feel like I was heard. I didn't get justice. I didn't Nobody cared. And if you do your research and you understand what's at stake, then you will know how important this is. So, just educate yourselves. That's my plea to everyone out there, is to know how important these judicial races are and make your choices wisely. So why should you vote for me for the Court of Common Pleas? I think that I have a number of qualities that are important for a judge, and my parents taught me a lot of things, but one of the most important things that they taught me was how to respect people and empathy. They taught me the importance of looking at someone and knowing somebody and trying to understand their situation and walk in their shoes. And that is something that I feel that I'm able to do and able to understand. And I think that's very important for a judge, to be able to see another person and think about what life looks like from their perspective, and consider that when you're making your rulings, knowing you have to follow the law, but also taking into consideration what somebody is going through and why they are before you, what's brought them to that place. And so that is something that I will always consider. I will always listen. You will always be heard in my courtroom. There's also never disrespect and never be bias in a courtroom where I'm sitting behind the bench. And I think that is something that is very important, that people will be listened to, respected, and heard. And I feel like that is when people feel like there's been justice given to them, whether the outcome is what they wanted or not. And that's very important. I also have experience, 20 years across all divisions of the Court of Common Pleas, as well as leadership. I was the president of the Allegheny County Bar Association during COVID, and I've been in the government sector, private sector, healthcare sector, and I would be honored to serve the people of Allegheny County as a judge. And like I said, practical problem solvers together. I think that people can collaborate, find solutions. We have a lack of resources. We have to be innovative and come together to make this better. And I think I'm very good at bringing people together to do that. So, like I say, common sense for the common pleas. And I hope that I would have your support on May 20th in the primary, and you would vote for me for Court of Common Pleas, Elizabeth Hughes. And thank you very much. Vote for me. I'm last on the ballot.